Hey guys, so welcome to the first video that we're shooting entirely in the new Boosted Media studio. So we've been busy since the last video moving everything across from the old place to the new place. And what we're going to be doing today is getting things set up again. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to show you a bit of behind the scenes and how everything works. Now, obviously we did have videos originally when we built the triple 65-inch 4K rig, but we have made a couple of fine-tuning adjustments since then. We've added the fourth monitor as well, of course, and we've done separate videos on all of those, but I thought it'd be a good opportunity to kind of just run you through everything today in the one video. We do also have a couple of little adjustments that we want to make to this as well, just around some band-aid solutions that we've found to a couple of limitations in the old studio, and now we actually have the opportunity to fix it properly without having to pull everything off the rig to do so. So we're going to be going through the entire process today. And yeah, by the end of the video, you'll have a much clearer understanding of exactly what goes into the triple 65-inch 4K rig and how it all works. So let's go. So I guess one of the first things to explain here is a little bit more around exactly what we have here for the monitor stands. A lot of people ask us, where did we get the monitor stands? It's all completely kind of custom built by us to suit the exact purpose around a couple of other kits which are available on the market. So it's a mix of SIMLAB and track racer parts that we have here. We kind of just pulled together what bits and pieces we had based on the SIMLAB triple monitor stand, which is available off the shelf, which we were previously using for the triple 35-inch ultra wides, which we were running on the rig a couple of years ago, or a year ago, I should say. And then we also have a couple of pieces of track racer profile here. We've got the SIMLAB fourth monitor mount here with their side brackets. And then we've got a couple of other bits of profile here, which I think are part of a track racer rig. So it's a bit of a mismatched mix of all sorts of bits and pieces. You know, this piece of profile here is obviously not a standard length either between. So essentially what we've done is just make the triple screen mount bigger, but then we've also added some additional supports as well, just to make sure that everything's nice and rigid, because obviously the triple 65-inch monitors are very, very, very heavy. I think they're probably about 40 kilograms each or something like that. So yeah, we wanted to make sure we weren't going to get any sag over time, and that, you know, if they were to get bumped or something like that, they would be nice and strong and not going to move around. So if you look at it kind of from here forward, it's essentially just a normal triple or quadruple monitor stand. And then obviously with the addition of these legs on the side as well, just to add that additional rigidity on the sides here. And you can see we've used nice thick corner brackets here. We've added reinforcement basically wherever we can as well. And that's made it a little bit easier to measure things too. So yeah, look, it's a pretty simple design really. It's just a case of, we were lucky we were able to sort of scrounge together all the bits of profile from other bits and pieces and other projects that we needed. In terms of actually mounting the monitors themselves, these are just your standard sort of heavy duty wall brackets or VESA mounts. So normally this would be bolted to the wall or the stud inside your wall, and then the TV literally just hooks on. We'll show you how that works a little bit later on once we hook on, but really simple. I really like this design. We kind of wanted to go with something like this simply because the TV just hooks on, and then you can also slide it left and right as well. So it means we can hook it on over to the right and then get everything lined up, get everything in position, and then slide it together. Then we obviously have the ASUS bezel-free kits, which we use as well. Now we do have a separate video where we talked about the ASUS bezel-free kit specifically as well. We have made a couple of changes to how it's implemented since that video, so we'll run you through that quickly today as well if we have time. And you can see if we have a look at the mounts here, I think these are these are part of the track racer triple screen mount. We just really like these brackets. They gave us the scope for adjustment here that we needed. Now in terms of angles here, the philosophy that we've used is basically to try and, you know, create a center point here where the driver sits, and then have the same distance from the driver's eyes to the center of each of the three monitors. So we've kind of adjusted all of our angles around that. Now, if you use online calculators, I know Carl Gosling recently had a really great video that he shared with all the triple screen calculations that he used for his triple 55-inch LG screens that he used on his rig. We kind of just basically went from, okay, this is a driving position, let's measure the center point of each screen and then adjust the angles around that. And that's worked really well for us. The result that we got when we used an online calculator, same one that he used for his setup, was actually a little bit different. We ended up with the screens 10 degrees tilted inwards more, I think it was. But look, what we have here works well. We don't really see any reason to change the angles. So we kind of just lucked it the first go and then made a couple of little adjustments from there just to make sure that driving position was correct and everything, because we weren't sure exactly how far back the rig was actually going to end up being from the screens as well. That was another big sort of factor to consider. But one thing that we didn't really consider with the initial build, which actually turned out to be quite a big, not issue, but limitation, I suppose would be the best word, is there is a very small sort of vertical sweet spot. As you move your driving position or your eyes up and down within the bounds of the screens, the angles actually change. So as you move up, if you're looking down towards the screens, it kind of bends everything like that. And then if you lower yourself down, it goes like that as well. So you kind of have to have the screens at exactly the right level with your eyes so that it doesn't buckle and bend in the vision. And the bezel-free kits actually exaggerate that even further, because you sort of have a really defined line in the middle where the bend begins, whereas when you have a bezel there, it kind of masks it a little bit. So that was something that we never really accounted for when we originally set up the rig, because I just didn't think of it. You know, we were kind of learning as we went along. So what we actually ended up doing was sitting the rig on top of some 40mm pavers, basically. So the rig was actually raised up to make sure that the rig was in the sweet spot for the screens and where we had those mounted, because it was going to be a big job to take the screens back off the rig and adjust the height. So the first thing that we're going to do today is actually lower all of these by 40mm. So that will mean that we don't have to have the rig on top of those pavers. So all we're going to do is just basically measure that distance and then drop that by 40mm. Do exactly the same thing here as well, and then the same thing on the other side, obviously, as well. Now, one of the really important things when building a rig like this is measuring everything, basically, making sure that everything's aligned correctly. Even just the slightest little bit of twist on something is enough to throw everything out. And then you mount your monitors and they're all buckled, or one leg ends up floating in the air. Once you add weight to it, it can be a real problem. So it really does pay to measure everything, make sure that everything is exactly right before you mount anything. So we're going to do things like making sure that our angles here are at exact 90 degrees so that our legs aren't buckled. You can actually see this leg is bent in ever so slightly. We're also going to measure the distance from the wall here behind us, which is kind of like a known reference point. We're going to measure the distance from the wall to the back of each leg, and that is going to make sure that the rig is actually aligned perfectly square to the room. We do have the rig slightly offset to the left-hand side in terms of the space here, simply because we are working with a wall here as well, and obviously the screen's going to get close to that wall, so everything's kind of moved over this way. You can see down here, obviously we're limited by how far we can go up to the wall, but we may actually end up moving the whole rig forward a little bit just to tuck it in behind here if we need to. But yeah, first thing we're going to do is drop this by 40mm, and then we'll line everything up, make sure everything's square. Check that all our angles are right as well. What we did when we moved it is we actually drew some little lines here on all of these bits so that you can see exactly where things were set. So we've done a little curve here. We've drawn a little line down here as well as on the back side, just so we can make sure that our angles are exactly the same as what they were in the old place, save us having to sort of go around with protractors and set everything up again. And you can see what we did to move it was literally just take these off, and then we can bolt it back on again from here. So yeah, let's get everything adjusted, get everything mounted up, and we should be good to go. So we've got the first screen mounted, and happy to report that it is absolutely perfect. Now, the one thing that we overlooked again when we built the rig originally was the pitch of the screen, or the angle that the screen is sitting on front to rear. So what I mean by that is if you hold the spirit level on the side, you can see it's way, 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 way off. So the bottom needs to come out. Now, that's not so important if you're just using one screen, but you can imagine if you've got 3 screens, they're not going to meet up properly in the middle. They'll be rubbing at the top, but there'll be a big gap at the bottom. So what we need to do is put some spacers or something that we can use behind here. Some VESA mounts will have like a little screw or something that you can use to adjust. These unfortunately don't, because they're not obviously designed for triple screen use. But what we did was we went and got some of these little spacers from a local hardware store. These are often used for, spacing out windows when you're building a house, or, sometimes they can wedge them between the tiles when they're grouting, things like that in a bathroom. So there's a lot of different uses, but these are very commonly available. Any hardware store is going to have these. So what I did was basically, and I'll swing around behind quickly. literally just push the TV out and then just wedge these between on the back of the plastic here. So what this is effectively doing is just creating a spacer between the TV and the vase mount, and that is enough to just swing the bottom in and out like so. You can see there's quite a bit of give in the metal here. It is a little bit tricky and a little bit cumbersome to just sort of get it exactly right, but it is worth taking the time to do so. So yeah, definitely at that point of the build, you want to get on it with a spirit level. That's something that we didn't do originally, so we were kind of just having to guess, and we had the screens rubbing together, and it was just a bit of a mess. So in hindsight, that's definitely the way I would have done it the first time and the way we're going to do it this time. Now, one thing just to mention there as well, as I come back around, is you want to do that after you've already put the weight of the other two screens on. So what we'll do is we'll get the TVs mounted on the stands, but have a bit of a gap here, so they're not going to be rubbing together. That way, we're not going to have the weight of the screens kind of making the spaces fall out and things like that. Again, it's going to depend on the types of vase mounts that you're using, but for our particular one, we'll get the screens mounted up, get all the spaces in, then we'll slide the side screens in, space those out as well. It's actually pretty incredible how well this turned out. Come over here, have a look. Exactly the same at the top there, less than a millimeter variance on the tip. And then you've got the tiniest little gap there in a few spots. And that's more just the variance in the screens than it is anywhere else. But the edges are meeting exactly the same, and it's exactly the same on this side as well. It's actually worked better than it did in the old studio, and I'd say that's because we were set up on a garage floor that probably had a little bit of variance just in the level of the floor itself, because they don't make them to the same standards that they do for a slab for an actual house build. So really happy with how that's turned out. What we'll do now is we'll run a length of gaffer tape down the back of these monitors as well. We'll have the black side facing towards the front, and then a double layer on the back just to seal that off and make it so there's no light seepage through. And then we'll mount our bezel-free kits on here as well to complete that side of things. We've also got to mount the fourth monitor still, so we'll get that up next. And then if we come over here quickly, Tom has built these cards, which basically have got a whole bunch of felt on them. I'm not going to lift them up too high now, but there you go. So what we're planning on doing is basically having those along the back here to give us a nice black backdrop, and it's a really nice dark black felt that's not too reflective as well, so it shouldn't have too much light spill. You'll remember the old setup in the old studio, we had a black curtain that was running basically all the way around the room to create that black backdrop so we didn't get any spill and any weird things going on behind the screens in the videos. So we'll sort that out. We're also going to have to do something along the bottom side as well, so you don't see that. We may end up having to, sit this on top of some sort of a black mat or something as well, just to get rid of the light colored carpet, so we don't see that in the videos too. But generally speaking, you don't tend to see down that low anyway. So it should hopefully be enough to just have some sort of a drape underneath, and then we can maybe lean that forward a little bit or something. So we've got to figure all that out. We also need to figure out our ambient lighting system as well. I'm sure a few of you have probably already commented on the video about that. So previously we just had that kind of double-sided tape to the ceiling. Because we are renting this house, we don't want to do anything that might damage the ceiling. So we're going to figure out some sort of a way to mount those as well. We might end up creating some sort of an armature off the back of those uprights that we can then drape or string the lights across or something. We'll figure it out. But yeah, really stoked with how well these screens have lined up. I was a little bit nervous about, potentially having the carpet create issues. We can see the corners are sitting nice and flat too. They're not raised up. They're not bouncing up off the ground. That's another thing that is always a little bit concerning. I remember when I built the P1X and did the 35s, when I first put it together, and it wasn't the fault of the kit, it was my own fault. When I first put it together, one of the legs was like upright like that, just because I didn't have the angles quite right. So yeah, it just goes to show, look, we knocked this whole thing over in probably less than 2 hours. And that was purely just because we took the time to measure everything 15 times and make sure that all of our distances, all of our measurements were spot on, our levels were right before we put the screens on. So definitely the way to go. So we'll get the fourth monitor mounted now. We'll have a look at those backboards, and then we'll get our bezel-free kit up and black out the back behind that, and then we can get the rig into place. Basically what we've got is the backboards that I showed you before, felt covered. So we've created basically a black cocoon around the whole thing, or a booth I suppose you could call it. We are still going to enclose the pedal area down the bottom there as well, but we haven't figured it. We'll get the rig in place before we worry about that. It might be as simple as just sort of like draping a black sheet or something over that general area. But as I mentioned at the top of the video, we want to have this kind of open space behind so we can put cameras behind and film pedals and things like that. That's one of the real difficulties that we've had in the past, is just not having any access behind the rig to film things, put cameras, put computers, and it's just, you know, in that little tiny space that we had before, it was just really hard. So we've got the felt covers everywhere. They're not too bad acoustically, so the echo in here, there's a little bit of echo at the moment, but we don't have any other furniture or anything on the other walls around the room, so that'll improve over time. We do have some acoustic tiles as well, which we can still put up if we need to. We'll probably put a couple on the ceiling above the rig. The other thing we've done is build an armature behind, as we suggested we might do before, and it was actually quite funny because this is pretty much exactly what we'd intended to do when we built the lighting system at the old house. We spent about an hour in Bunnings, which is the biggest Australian hardware store, sort of, you know, looking at all sorts of different things. We looked at one point at putting like a whole mesh screen over the top of the rig so we could mount things to it. But what we've done now is build this system, and basically, like, we didn't want to mount anything to the ceiling or you know, do any damage to the walls. So everything is kind of self-contained here. So just some wooden uprights here, and then a big structure around the top. And what we've done is string up one of our Philips Hue lights, which is the outdoor LED strip version. So that is pointing at a 45-degree angle down directly towards the front here. So the aim is, if you look at our driving videos, really all we need light on is just the steering wheel and my arms and hands, and that's pretty much it. We don't need to worry about lighting my face or anything like that, because all the videos are point of view pointing towards the screens. So we want to try and get as much light as we possibly can on my arms and still have that be somewhat directional. So what we're thinking is, with the remaining strips, these are actually long enough to run along here and then loop back and into the center. So we're thinking we might actually kind of do like a little loop system to create almost like a butterfly shape around. And that'll give us a nice sort of separation between the lighting coming in through the windscreen, which will be simulated from behind here. Now that sounds a little bit weird, but remember again, all we're actually wanting to achieve here is just lighting my hands and the steering wheel. We're not really worrying about anything else. So we've got that coming in from the back here rather than the front, simply because it would cast a shadow if we had it behind the 42-inch screen here. So we figured that was going to be the most sensible way to do it. And then we should have, you know, a good defined left-hand side and right-hand side with the light simulating coming in through the side windows as well. So that's the theory, at least anyway. And, you know, based on our experience in the previous setup, we kind of knew what the limitations were there, and we kind of intended, if we'd stayed there, to do something similar to this anyway. So a few of you guys had asked, you know, are you still running that lighting system? Now, when we did the original video on the lighting system, you know, obviously we were driving through shadows slowly, and it was quite stark, the difference between, you know, light and dark in the shadows. When you're at racing speed, or you're driving in a cloudy day or something like that, you know, obviously there isn't as much lighting change. So it was always working, but it certainly could have been improved, and we're hoping that the changes that we've made here will improve things further. Now, we've also got the ability to clip some lights on in the corners and things if we need to. But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at now. So next step is to finish stringing these lights up. We'll do that tomorrow. We're going to call it a day for today. We've also got to put our bezel-free kits on here. We're going to put some double-sided tape or some gaff tape behind here as well, just to black off behind the bezel-free kits so we don't get any light spillage through the crevice here or through the little gap. Obviously, any light that's coming in from behind is going to shine through our bezel-free kits and create, you know, like a white glow, which just, you know, ruins the immersion and makes it look like garbage. So we want to separate that out as much as possible. And yeah, then it'll be simply moving the rig in, getting all that wired back up again, firing everything up, and hopefully we won't run into any issues. We did turn the screens on momentarily just before, just to make sure we hadn't put in any cracks or put our thumb through or anything like that, but everything seems to be good. So we're going to call it a day, and we'll come back again tomorrow and finish the job. Okay, so a couple of days later now, we've been taking our time to really make sure we get everything right here, and we're pretty much at the point now, in fact I think we are at the point now where we can do a power up test and make sure that everything is functional. Tom's been busy in the other studio as well, setting things up in there, so I'm going to go take a look at what he's been doing there with you guys in just a moment too. But yeah, a couple of things I wanted to update you on in here first. Obviously you can see the rig's in position now. We've got some bottom curtains in, well, not really curtains, they're boards, the same as what we had at the top. just kind of tucked in there. Now we haven't fixed those things in place simply because, you know, they're not going to get touched anyway. If we need to adjust cabling and stuff, we can easily just slide them out. So the aim, as I'm sure you figured out, is to have it so that when you're sitting in the driver's seat, everything within your entire field of view is either black or screen or wheel. So that's what we've tried to achieve here. And I'll run you through a couple of other things in just a moment. So even if you come over here and have a look, I've put some black felt, which Tom tracked down. And that was actually off a Race Beyond Matter video. He had covered his entire steering wheel and assembly and everything in this stuff. So that was a great idea that we picked up from Race Beyond Matter. So we may actually end up wrapping some of this as well with the same stuff, just to get rid of as much reflectivity as possible, so that like literally all you're seeing is just the wheel, my hand, my arms, and then whatever is on the screen. So there's still a couple more little bits and pieces that I want to cover in this same stuff. Just want to make sure that it is going to stick and it's not all going to fall off before we go too crazy with the stuff. But yeah, look, otherwise we've strung up the lights now as well. It's probably the other big thing that we've changed and done a few things with. So as you saw before, we've got the strip running along the back. We also have these two strips now. Originally I said I was going to probably look at either stringing them down to here or stringing them back across here with some wire. What we found is that the spill of light, or the spread of light from these, is broad enough. Then they're non-directional enough that it kind of just works like this. You know, we've got this kind of halo effect going on up here, and it just kind of beams down nicely. One thing that I am a little bit concerned about is that when we're sitting in the rig, I can just see the very edges here. So we'll have to check and see what that looks like with the helmet cam on a little bit later on, remembering that the camera is not in exactly the same position of my eyes. It's sitting just slightly higher. So that may not actually be a problem for the camera view, but if it is, all we'll do is we'll just pop those out, wrap that around as well, because we're not seeing anything from there back. And you may also notice we moved these boards up as well. That was just to get rid of the white gap in between here. So you can see before they were sitting at this height. So that is simply just to make sure that all we're seeing there is black all the way through our entire field of view. So yeah, other than that, the bezel free kit is on now too. So let me just quickly talk you through that. This was an idea that we got from Carl Gosling's channel when he set up his 55-inch screens. So what we've done is just a little cutout piece of plastic here, just clear plastic with a piece of string threaded through it and a knot. And what we're doing is we're pulling that string through from the back, and that pulls the bezel free kit onto the screens. And it looks kind of crude at the moment when there's no light coming in from behind it, but once the screens are on and there's light projecting through, then yeah, they pretty much disappear completely, and it looks really, really good. So that was a great idea from him. Previously, you'll remember we actually had little pieces of sticky tape, double-sided clear tape on the sides. And what that was doing was giving us a bit of a rainbow effect on the edges, and also spacing the bezel-free kits out from the screen a little bit too. So yeah, that works a lot better. Now, unfortunately, they've actually discontinued these bezel-free kits, which is a little bit scary because, you know, I don't like to have something that I can't replace that's so critical to what we're doing here. So if you happen to have one of these kits that you don't want and you're looking to sell it, let us know. Should I put a comment down below, or let us know on Discord, and we might pick them up from you if there's any available. So let's quickly look around the back as well before we power it up. I'll show you how all the PC and everything's set up. This is our streaming PC and recording PC. So this is the PC that the cameras and audio and everything feed back to. Now, before you get upset with me in the comments, I will put something underneath this to lift it up off the ground so it doesn't suck up dirt and garbage, but we just had it there temporarily to test it out. So that's the reason why that's there. But come through over here, and if we go in behind the rig, switch on the light. So yeah, I mean, we haven't put a lot of time and effort into tidying up all the cabling and everything just yet, simply because you know, if something's not working, we might have to pull things out again. So didn't want to go too nuts with it. But yeah, that's the Sim PC sitting there. We did a video specifically on that computer just recently, so I won't take you through all the details of it again now, but it's an open frame design, 3090 with an 11900K. We might upgrade that to the 12700K in the next little while. We'll see how we go. We've got a little network switch down here as well. So we've got a gigabit line running back to our router, which is in the kitchen. And then that's farming out to the various different components here. So we'll run another line from here to the other PC when we set that up too. But we've got one here to the Sim PC, one here to our Philips Hue control module. So that is the module that controls all the lighting. Then we've got one running back to our streaming PC, and then the one that's connecting back to the router. So that's what all that is. This little box here as well, which is our D-Box control module. So that network cable is actually running back to the master control module underneath the rig. And then over this side, it's simply just a power board with our power supplies for everything else. And then we've got some little wireless PowerPoint control modules so I can switch everything on from my phone. So let's head back around the front now and we can get things powered up, see how everything goes. We obviously still got a lot of things to fix up out here. We're gonna set up, we bought a couch which we're gonna put here. We'll probably set the projector up on this wall, I think, so we can, you know, watch TV and have this as sort of like a second space for testing gear and stuff with the projector. And then the computer desk with, you know, the gaming PC and, you know, editing and all that will probably sit over here, I think. There's a good space for it here. And there's still plenty of open space here to put tripods and cameras and stuff if we need to. So that's the plan. All right, let's get this powered up. All 3 screens came on, that's a good start. So we should see the D-box do its thing. There we go, okay, that's working. That took a little bit longer than I thought it would. That had my heart racing a little bit. We've got to switch on the network hub, or the USB hub I should say. And then what I've done also is I've moved a lot of these control surfaces which were previously in front down to the side here. And that's just simply, again, so that we don't have anything that isn't black in the field of view. You would have noticed in some of our videos, sometimes the camera drifts off a little bit and you might see the Go XLR, you might see the Stream Deck. So again, just trying to get all those out of the shot. All right, PC power up. There we go. That's the remote PC switch that we did a video on about a year ago now. So I'll link that down in the description below for you guys too. So that's simply just responsible for booting up and shutting down the PC. So any second now, we should hopefully see some display on the screens. There we go, okay. It's booting. Good sign. Yes, all right, we have all 3 screens. Let's log in quickly. There we are. And I even managed to get the ports right. What are the odds of that? So, yeah. It looks like everything's all good, everything's working. So let me just quickly fire up the SIMUCUBE as well, make sure that makes its little beeping sound. So yeah, there we go, everything's working. I can see the SIMUCUBE's connected and functional, so that's good. Go XLR's detected. Sweet, I think we're good to go. So we've switched off all the other lights in the entire area other than just the hue lights above. All I wanted to quickly do now is just jump into the rig, which I'll do, and then we can just quickly have a look and see how effective this is. Now, the first thing that I'm noticing straight away is that it is a lot brighter than it was in the previous space. I think a lot of the light previously was wasted, sort of reflecting against curtains and things. You'll remember, if you look at some of those older videos, the lights were a lot higher than they were here, and they're kind of wrapped around the back. So I'm just gonna experiment here a little bit now. Obviously, the lights will need to be set up again from scratch pretty much because all the spacing and everything is going to be different. Now, we do have a video where we went through the setup of the HEUSINK lighting system, so I'll link that down in the description below as well. But if there's enough interest, I might actually do another video just showing how to set it up because there has been a few changes to the software since. But you can see just how much difference that's making. And here we go, bright. That's kind of like a warm, bright yellow, dim, night light, completely off. So basically from off, that's just the light spilling off the screens, to maximum brightness, which would be energize. That's really bright. So that's the range of lighting that we have to work with. Now, the other thing that I mentioned before is I could just see the corners of the lights in the seat. If we bring the camera down here, I'm gonna grab the camera off Tom. You can see just there, the reflection of the light, which is actually over here on the screen over here. So as I was saying before, we can fix that by simply just wrapping the tail end of that light on either side. Just that tail end where it's looped over, that can wrap up over the top, and that will definitely take care of that issue because it's only probably maybe like a foot of light that's showing up for me, maybe even less than that. So that can definitely be fixed. But we'll see. Like if I sit myself up high like this, it's fine. It's only if I sink down in the seat. So we'll just have to see what it looks like on camera with the GoPro helmet cam. But yeah, look, I'm really happy with that. I think everything's gonna work pretty much as I'd intended. But yeah, really happy with how everything's looking so far. It's definitely, it's funny, it feels like a more open space. Like maybe it might be something to do with the white carpet or the lighter color carpet or something like that, but it feels like a more open space, but it feels more professional with all of this wrapped around rather than the curtains that we had before. So yeah, let's go in now and have a look at what Tom's been up to in the studio. Okay, so here we are in the studio, and I mean, it looks pretty much the same as it always has looked, but obviously a different room to where we were before. Now we have space behind us again to have the shelf and props behind like what we used to have back before we built the triple 65-inch rig. So you remember we used to have a little bit more space to play with in that room, but as you saw in the part 1 video of this series on updating the studio, yeah, we just, once we built that triple 65-inch rig, we literally were working in like a 4 square meter space for everything else. So what this is allowing us to do is have complete freedom in terms of moving around. We don't have to set things up multiple times to, you know, to get the job done. That was one of the problems we had before was, you know, we'd have to pack down what we were doing previously, move everything around just to get started on the next thing. Whereas now we can be working on a sim racing video, working on some sort of a project, building a computer or something as well. We can have probably up to 3 different things going on at the same time and not have to move everything around to, you know, adjust for each of them, which is going to be a huge time saver. Probably enough to even pay for the rent of the studio, to be honest with you, just the amount of time we're going to save in terms of workflow and man hours wasted, you know, just moving things around. So that's really exciting. So let's just have a quick look around what we've done here, just in terms of acoustics and stuff like that. It's not really a whole lot, you know, in terms of exciting things to show you. We've got the security camera sitting in the corner, as you saw we were working on installing previously. So we've got 6 of those throughout the entire house. There's one in the garage too, looking over the car. We've got the Nest doorbell on the front as well, so that's going to let us know if anybody comes up to the front door. So we've got pretty much complete coverage of every single room in the entire house, all the walkways and everything. We've got the old cabinet that we used to have. That's just sitting on bricks here at the moment. Obviously, because it is a rental, we can't wall mount it, but when we eventually move to a place that's our own, we'll wall mount something like that again. We've got our track art up around the room again too. And then other than that, it's just acoustic baffles and things like that. So around behind Tom on the camera, we've got one of those big freestanding acoustic panels. And if we wheel that out, I'm not going to do it now because there's panels up on top, but basically there's acoustic foam in the back of that. So that gives a nice sort of dead sound in the room. Acoustic panels over there as well. And another one that Tom's put together here, again with the acoustic material inside, just sitting on a 3M wall hook there. And that is pretty much it. We painted the walls white as well, obviously. Same goes for the other room where the sim is as well. So all of this was previous to that kind of horrible orange color, or whatever color it was, like a brownish orange kind of thing. It was gross. And yeah, because we've got the blockout shutter on the window as well, we're able to roll that down. So we've got complete control of the light in here. There's no ambient light coming in at all. So we can go from complete darkness to as bright and whatever color temperature we want to. And that is pretty much it. So it's going to be amazing just to have this separate space to separate everything out. And as you can see here, almost at 200,000 subscribers over on the Lametric time thing. It looks like we're going to hit 200,000 in the next 3 or 4 days, hopefully, or by the time this video goes live, we probably actually will have already hit 200,000. So I guess to close off the video, just wanted to take the opportunity to say another massive thanks to everybody that's made, you know, this possible. We certainly couldn't afford to do anything like this, or even, you know, imagine doing something like this out of our own pockets. So it's purely down to the support that you guys give the channel through, you know, membership, Patreon, watching the videos, sharing the videos, you know, buying gear through the affiliate links that we provide. All those little things, they all add up together to, you know, to make this business grow and to make the things that we're sharing with you guys now possible. And what I'm really, I guess, most excited about with this is, you know, just the ability that's going to give us to, you know, bring the content to the next level, do things that we just couldn't do previously because we didn't have the space to. So we'll leave it at that for today. I think the next video update will probably be a bit of a driving test in the sim rig to make sure that that's all running how we want, and taking you through any other little bits and pieces that we might change or optimize there. And then I guess we'll probably come back again once we've got everything completely set up, all the other rooms as well, and just give you a final tour of the entire place. As it kind of sits at the end. I'm sure we'll be making incremental updates and changes as we go along and sort of work on our workflow. But yeah, that is where we're at now. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Thanks once again for all the support, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.